Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. Valerie Recore is a time management and productivity specialist. So I just think this is the coolest job I have ever heard of because as moms, we all struggle so much with time management and productivity. And so Valerie, tell us a little bit how you got into this field of work.
Yeah. So I have always loved organizing things. I was always the organized child with like shoeboxes full of, ticket stubs when that was a thing growing up. And I also really loved reading, especially in the last couple of decades of my life, reading time management books. I don't know why. I just love reading stories about people who just needed some shifts in how they spent their time. And then so my oldest is almost 12. And when she was born, I quit the corporate world and opened a professional organizing business because I thought, hey, I could get paid to help other people organize their stuff. I thought working part-time was the brilliant answer to having kids and being able to work. Little did I know that owning your business is so much work and working part-time and all, that magic balance that we all strive for does not exist. And over the years, my organizing business shifted into more of a productivity piece. I really enjoyed talking with my clients more about how they were spending their time versus organizing their closets. And then the pandemic hit, and I really just saw moms get slammed, and we just suffered being home so much, having our kids home. We just took the brunt of all of everything. And that mental load that we carry as moms just was brought out so that we were talking about it more. I think it was always there, but I think it just became something that women were talking about more. And then through that, somewhere along that path, I discovered the Fair Play method, which is not my method. It is based on a book by a woman named Eve Rodsky. And she just was really struggling with all of the work she was doing to keep her family functioning. And she tells so many great stories in her book. And she just kind of had it. And so she came up with this method that really is a way for you to get your partner, your family on the same team. So it's all of you against the dishes instead of you fighting against each other about the dishes. And this method that just gets everybody together and on the same page in a way that isn't mom making sure everybody is doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like this book was the answer to all the mom rage, to all of the stuff that we have and feel. And I was reading books on mom rage and all of this, the mental load and how we're just exhausted and resentful and angry. And here was a tool that we could use to kind of dig our way out of this hole.
I love
And so
that.
here we are.
I just hear the voices of like so many of my friends or just, people that I know that are like, they've had enough with that mom load and the mom rage and all that stuff and just feeling overwhelmed and perfect time of year with us being back to school, the routines change. And so therefore the responsibilities change of what needs to happen. So can you just give us the idea of like what this looks like for and again my typical audience is families of teens and tweens, but of course there's usually a younger sibling there too and they might have an elementary school. What does that look like for a typical family?
Yeah. So it starts as a conversation with you and your partner on whether you are married or co-parenting, whatever that looks like. You're having a conversation. And actually, you could get your teens and tweens involved in this too, where you start by talking about what it is that's important to your family. What are your values as a family? And if that feels too broad then or too big of a conversation, maybe it's what do you want this season to look like? So we talk often in my family about what do we want this next semester of school or this fall season as we're moving into, what do we want it to look and feel like? And so then from there, you're getting into who is doing what around the house and it's also helping you define things like what are your birthdays What do birthdays look like? What do holidays look like? Are you
Mm.
throwing elaborate birthday parties because you want to and you enjoy it, because your kids want to and they're also involved, or because your neighbors are doing it and you feel obligated and you hate every minute of it?
Mm.
And coming into that, like, what makes sense for our family and why are we doing things this way?
Mhm.
And then getting into some of the nitty gritty of what Eve Rodsky calls the daily grinds, the things that have to happen every day, the dishes, the meals, the packing of lunches, the cleaning, the laundry, all of those things that just have to happen to keep a family functioning.
Mhm.
And you have conversations as to what does a completed task look like, which gets into what an acronym called the minimum standard of care. So it's not just whoever has the higher standards. It's like you are agreeing upon these values of how something is completed
Mm.
together.
Mhm.
And why? Why do we clean our dishes? Why do we clean our kitchen every night? What's behind all of that? Why do we take our trash out once a week or when the trash bag gets full or whatever that looks like in your family?
Mhm.
Um, and so let me give an example. My husband and I share the dishes in the sense like we run our dishwasher twice a day.
Yeah.
I've got 2 kids, we run our dishwasher a lot, we go through a lot of dishes, and I got really tired of feeling like it was always on me to deal with it. I would notice it. My job is more flexible. Currently, my desk, we're recording this, I am next to my kitchen, so I can see the mess out of the corner of my eye,
Yeah.
and I always felt like it was on me, right? Like the dishes were talking to me, and I was like, "I am done feeling this way." And so
Mhm.
we came up with this plan where Sunday through Saturday, one of us is fully in charge of the dishes.
Mm.
Emptying and loading the dishes, hand washing the stuff that needs to be washed, um, and then making sure the kitchen is clean enough at night that whoever makes breakfast in the morning doesn't have to clean the kitchen first.
Mhm.
That was kind of what our minimum standard of care, that's kind of where we left it. Now, that might look different in your household. It might need to be, wipe the counters wiped down after every meal or whatever makes sense for you.
Mhm.
We're also getting my 9-year-old involved because we run the dishwasher twice a day. She is now responsible for doing it one of those times every
Mm.
day.
Mhm.
And this year we're working on her noticing that it is her job, not me or my husband asking her to do it or do it with us, but her coming home from school and paying attention to, okay, these are the things I need to look at. Does the dishwasher need to be dealt with? And then making it happen.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because of her age, we're going to work on that with her, right? I will be reminding her and doing it with her for a while, and that's okay. We're going to work up to her own independence. But then when it's not my week, it's not my problem. I don't have to think about it. It's
I love
only, when I come into the kitchen in the morning, if I have to clean the kitchen, I'm grumbling about it, but that doesn't happen very often. Our other rule, as part of the MSC, is you can't leave everything for the person on Sunday to take over.
Yeah.
So yesterday, my husband spent a good chunk of Sunday cleaning the kitchen because he just
Mhm.
hadn't dealt with it during the week. And so it
Mhm.
was kind of like, you can't leave me a mess
Right.
because you didn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
And so you have those conversations around all of the tasks in a household, because the other acronym we can talk about is conception, planning, and execution. So, like, it's one thing for somebody to plan all the meals and put together the grocery list, and for somebody else to go buy the groceries and be like, well, but I helped. Like, okay, but I thought about all of these things that needed to go on that list and who was going to be where, when, and what we needed for snacks and for breakfast and lunch and all of that. And so you did the grocery shopping, great, but there was a lot of behind the scenes work that went into that.
Mhm.
And so getting somebody to take on that whole process from meal planning to buying groceries and involving the family if you need to, right? Like, we'll talk as a family of what are some meals you want to eat? Is there something you want to try? What have we not had for a while? What are you in the mood for? Um, but there's one person in charge of that whole process.
Mm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's a lot of talking. Hopefully that all
Yeah, and it's
makes
getting
sense.
my tons of wheels spinning for me, and I'm sure the audience as well. The thing I loved was the part about giving, in this case, mom a break where you didn't have to deal with the dishes for a whole week because that was your husband's job or your child's job or whatever. Because I think that's what I see a lot of, and I'm sure you do too, is just that mom burnout and the
Mhm.
fatigue and the overwhelm and just all those feelings that go into just exhaustion, which kind of builds up into resentment. And then you start yelling at your kids. And I work a lot with moms on emotional regulation and taking deep breaths and kind of doing
Mm.
visualization, whatever we need to do. But I don't necessarily handle the stuff that leads up to that, right? That sounds like that's kind of your job. So I'm just, my mind is having fun kind of playing around with that. So what advice would you give to moms in kind of the conversations that need to happen with the teenagers? Because for instance, my two boys are both in football season. And so they either have morning practice or they have afternoon practice. They get home, they're starving, they're exhausted, they have homework. They don't have a lot of bandwidth during a regular school day to pitch in. However, my kids do their own laundry, and that's usually Sunday nights. And so I have four kids, and they're all, kind of in line for who goes in which order, and they work it out. I don't get involved. They kind of just do their own thing. So that is their job. And then, my boys mow the lawn. They all have their different things, but
Mhm.
what would this look like if you do have a child who, in my oldest daughter has a job, so she often doesn't get home till pretty late too. Like, what does your method look like for these busy, tired teenagers who also have responsibilities of making good grades?
Mhm. It's having constant or regular check-ins and conversations about what that looks like. Certainly, there are going to be seasons where maybe your football players during the football season, they're not doing as much around the house. But
Mm,
when football season is over, that can shift. The seasons are going to shift, right? Because maybe
mm,
they don't need to mow the lawn in the winter, depending on where you live.
mhm,
And so they can take on something else during that time and it can shift. Like
mhm,
my goal for my kids isn't so much that their room is always perfectly clean and they're always on top of their chores, but that when they leave and live on their own and their dorm room or apartment gets super messy and gross, they'd have the skills to clean it or to maintain it or keep up with it, right? Like my 9-year-old hates cleaning her room and she's still at the age where she loves lots of toys. And apparently, toys come with 85 tiny little different pieces and they're all over the place. And her friends come over and trash it. And like, I don't make her clean that up all of the time, but I want her to have the skills to clean it up
mm,
when she's ready to make that happen. And so I would just be lots of conversations. Like a family meeting is one of the big, or a weekly check-in is one of the big parts of this whole thing, making it work. And it might change from week to week too, as to who is doing what. Maybe, one week one person's in charge of dealing with the trash, and then the next week somebody else is. So it's not always one person's job. Or you're talking about maybe during a certain season, some things kind of just get left behind or not done as thoroughly, or kind of understanding the season of life that you are in and what makes the most sense for your family during that season. And it might be that mom and dad just take on a little bit more during
mhm,
that time because what you have decided as a family, your goals are for your kids to be focused on this other stuff, on school, on their job, on sports, whatever falls in there. They know how to empty the dishwasher. And if they're keeping up on their laundry, then maybe for a while, mom and dad are doing a little bit more, knowing that that will shift over time and kind of, I think, changing with the season and the season of life you are all in, but talking about it. So you're not sitting there still angry that nobody is taking this stuff on or getting into like back to school, right? How many forms have we all filled out in the last couple of weeks? And I've
oh,
got two schools now. Like there's so much more, it feels like, and
mhm,
doctor's appointments, and your kids are probably, if you have teenagers, getting your kids involved and scheduling some of that stuff. Do they need
mm,
physicals for sports? Do you need to do that, or can your kids do that? And if they don't know how, then do it together to give them that skill and that practice and support. Um, but I think just having those conversations, even if it's every couple of weeks, but ideally it'd be once a week, just talking about what all of that looks like and what's important, what's going on this week that is important, what's going on in the next 2 weeks that's important,
mhm.
and who has the bandwidth to take on what during that time.
Yeah, I love that because it really kind of unites the family. We're talking about goals and values, all the things that I love to talk about. And my favorite part is so far just this flexibility, kind of allowing, giving grace to who needs grace and things like that, and kind of figuring that out. So now I'm imagining these conversations, whether it's weekly or whatever it is. And I always like to hear the voices in my head of other people who are saying, this could never work because, and the first thing I heard was, the kids saying, do I get paid?
Mm.
Or it's kind of the what's in it for me. And I'm of the mindset that kids should not get paid for certain things. I do feel like they need a chance to earn some money as well. So I'm kind of fall in the middle. Like I do pay my boys to do the lawn because
Mhm.
otherwise I'd be paying a lawn service. So it's like I might as well just keep the money in the family and allow them that. But other things like taking out the trash, just take out the trash. I'm not paying you to take out the trash. Half the
Mhm.
trash is yours anyway. So, so I'm curious, like, how do you bring that up to families in order to help get the kids on board and kind of, especially those resistant teenagers? Like, I know younger kids are more excited about helping mom or
Mhm.
dad. Older ones are a little bit more grumbly and, self-centered. That's how they are. That's how their brains are functioning at that moment. So what is your advice for that?
Yeah. So, one, I kind of struggle with the word help because, like, we're not necessarily helping mom or dad. We're contributing to the family. So, I try to talk about it in the like, these are family contributions. I'm even trying to move away from the word chores because I feel like, at least for adults and our kids hear it in our voices, it sounds yucky, right? When you're like, oh, we got to do a bunch of chores today. You're like, I don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. But these are the things that keep our family functioning. And I'm same as you. We are not a family that pays our kids get an allowance that is not tied to their tasks.
Mm.
Um, because we are all nobody's paying me to take out the trash or empty the dishwasher. And I feel like we all live here, so we all have to contribute to keeping the household clean and functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't work for you and you want to pay your kids for all of it because that's what you feel strongly about, then go ahead and make that happen.
Mm.
Um, I I'm just of the belief, and certainly, and when I was growing up, it was the same. My dad would pay me for extra chores around the house for things that like he was going to have to do anyway, or hire somebody to do if I was capable of making that happen. And he would pay me for it. And I feel you can certainly have a list beyond these are the things that need to happen regularly, but like here are the things that like really should happen on occasion above and beyond, and I will pay you for that. And I know there are so many different ways you can do that. But I am just of the belief that we all live here. We should all contribute to the house, um, working together and
Yeah.
getting involved.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So, okay, what else can you share as far as like, could you give us an example of maybe a client that you had or somebody that you were working with and, they were really in a tough spot and you came in and just kind of turned them around as far as that time management or productivity or any other kind of big transformation that you've helped make?
Yeah. So I had a client. One of the things that I occasionally do with clients is have them track their time because I think we think that we know where we're spending our time, but we don't necessarily have a great sense of it. So I had a client track her time, and at the time she had two young kids. And we noticed on her, so you track your time, and by tracking your time, I mean like every 30 minutes to an hour, you stop what you're doing and write down what you're doing.
Mm.
So it's not at the end of the day you sit down and try to remember, but like you are actively throughout the day doing that. And pick any week because as parents, there really is no typical week. So just pick a week, even if everybody's homesick, whatever that is in your family. But with this particular client, we noticed that she was in and out of the grocery store multiple times during the week. And so we started talking about why. And it would be, she'd be running into this store once or twice a week to pick up vitamins, and then this other store to pick up something that some snack her kids were out of. And so we worked on streamlining how she grocery shopped. Can you go to the store where you buy your vitamins once a month, every 2 weeks, and buy what you need for the next couple of weeks? Um, will your kids survive without the snack until you go to the store next week? What's going to happen if they don't have their favorite yogurt in the house for a few days? They were probably going to be fine. And really streamlined that. And so I think, and that falls into kind of having these conversations of how do you really want to be spending your time? That's one of the big things for me in my work and using fair play is designing this life that we don't want to run away from. That we may have mornings we grumble when we get out of bed because we're tired, but for the most part, like we're pretty happy with the way that things are going or we're working towards. And I think we can fall into this trap of just, well, this is what society is telling me to do, and this is what I feel like I have to do. And we're unhappy with it because we don't feel like we can change it. And so
Mm.
taking that time to really assess where we are and how things are functioning right now, which I know sounds big and overwhelming and maybe like not you're thinking I just have to get dinner on the table. I don't have time to do this. It could just be a 10-minute assessment of what are the big things in my life that are taking up so much of my time right now or my family's time, and am I happy doing that? Is this how we want to be spending our time? Do we love football? We're a football family, so every fall, this is what we're going to do. And really spending time thinking about that. And the answer might be yes, this is our jam. We love doing this and we are okay being this busy during football season and we're happy with that. Then go for it. I remember talking with a woman not that long ago who her kid was playing soccer. And she's like, well, I'm doing it because everybody else on the block is doing it. And I
Mm.
don't think she was excited about it, but she kind of felt like that was the only time her son was going to be able to hang out with the neighbors. And I pushed back on that, thinking of, but maybe there's another family or most of the families who feel the same way. They don't want to be doing soccer, but they feel like it is the only way. And so, what if you were the one that takes that step back or does something different? Then what happens? And so, really, I think just questioning or examining the way that we spend our time can help us shift even just a little bit. Like, we're not going to overhaul our life in the course of a weekend. It might just, like in our house, it just started with the dishes. And then we layered on tasks beyond that. And then as my kids get older, we're layering on more tasks. My kids do their own laundry now, and it's delightful. And they change their own sheets, and I love it. And my 9-year-old still needs help, but it's easier than me spending a bunch of time doing all of it. And so it's when we layered that all on over time. And so just taking that time to really evaluate how you are spending your time and what little shifts or tweaks can you make to change how you're spending if something doesn't feel right.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. That's I again, my wheels are going in lots of directions because I'm thinking, how can we transfer this information to our teenagers? Because I do
Mhm.
work with a lot of clients who have executive function challenges, ADHD, and time management issues with homework and motivation, procrastination, all those things. And my best way, which you have already said, is to model the behavior or to talk out the behavior and give the reasons why behind it. So even modeling the behavior about having them make their own doctor's appointments and any other responsibilities that they might want to learn. Because after all, you said it best, which is our job is to work ourselves out of a job. We want to be able to send them off knowing that they know that they have all these skills. I have
Mhm.
so many moms right now who kids are freshmen in college. And, so I still coach college kids as well. And some of them are really worried about how their teenagers are doing and how they're going to survive. And are they going to stay on top of their work? So, what would be any ideas you have about transferring this knowledge to teenagers, and especially the ones who might be neurodivergent, who do struggle? It doesn't come naturally to them. Like you said, since you were a little girl, you were reading books about this stuff, right? So there are some people who are literally on the opposite end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
and it's just not their thing. And I get that our brains all function differently, and they have strengths that we don't have, and vice versa. I'm kind of like a little bit of middle of the road where I'm not like super duper on top of things the way you are as far as that structure, but I also have some semblance. I have to get it done, and I have 4 kids, and I have a busy life, so I have to figure these things out. So how could we team up right now in our brain power and just figure out how to transfer this knowledge to teenagers?
Mhm. I think with the conversations again, because these are actually skills that, as much as the fair play method is talked about in families, you can use it with roommates, and you would just use specific tasks within roommates. You could use this in your dorm, in your apartments down the road. These are great. I mean, these are skills that I wish I had when my roommates would never clean anything ever, and it was always my job. It fell to me, and I didn't know how to have these conversations. So I think You could start by, so there's a deck of cards that you can buy related to the book, and it lists out, there's 100 cards in there related with all of the tasks that Ivransky came up with. Certainly, most families don't need all of them. Some of them are wild cards that are you don't need them all of the time, but you could pull out a card, maybe start with the daily grind and pull out a card and talk about it at dinner. Okay, let's talk about garbage. Why do we care about the garbage being taken out, and have a conversation? This is one of the goals I would like to do with my kids this fall, is starting to get them to just be aware of it. So they know, okay, we take the trash out because if we don't, it attracts bugs and our kitchen starts to smell, and all of the things it can lead to when you're not staying on top of the trash. So, okay, what does the conception, planning, and execution of taking out the trash look like? Because it's bigger than just telling somebody to take out the trash. You got to know, where are all of the trash cans? Where's the trash bag? Where's the barrel? When does that barrel need to be hauled to the curb? Who do you tell if we're out of trash bags? Like, there are multiple steps involved in all of this. Mm-hmm. And so having those conversations, even if nobody, one person is still taking the trash out regularly, but talking about it. Mm-hmm. And certainly, so neurodivergent is not a skill of mine. But I think kind of gamifying it could help, or, I think getting them, I think I would start with the conversation and then figure out how to move that into that awareness for everybody to know that, it's your week to take the trash out. What does that mean? Those conversations.
I love your Gamify solution. That's actually what I did with a younger client of mine last year, which was he needed to clean out his backpack every day because his papers were just like all over the place. And his mom was like, he never can find his homework. And she was really frustrated. And I said, okay, don't worry, I'll handle it. We'll figure it out. So I discovered his favorite sport is basketball. And so what we came up with a little game, and any paper that he would go through that he didn't need, we made sure there was a recycling bin somewhere nearby. I never saw this room in his house. I meet with my clients virtually, but he just told me there was. So I trusted that there was. And so he would just crinkle it up like a basketball and shoot hoops. And he would try to see how many hoops he could make with the papers he didn't need. Hopefully he didn't throw away anything that he actually needed, but it was a way to make it more fun and more engaging and kind of turn on those pieces of his brain that do like to be more active and do like to have more involvement, because some of that part is shut down. So that's a great idea. That you just thought of. So fantastic. Great putting two minds together. So, okay. Well, is there anything else before we go that you would like to share with the moms, like, last parting advice for the school year, anything like that?
I think we've covered all of it. I think the biggest thing I want your listeners to take from this is just spending that time to evaluate how you are spending your time and what is important to you. Can be the biggest thing and lead towards big change. And it might mean that you can't make those changes now because you've already committed to a bunch of stuff for the next semester, but knowing you want things to look different down the road, or knowing that you love the way things are right now and you don't want anything to change. But just spending some time evaluating it, I think, can be a huge step in the right direction.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. And so how can our listeners find you after today?
Yeah. So head to my website, strideproductivity.com, and you can find access to upcoming events that I might have, my private podcast where I talk about all of this in detail, and other ways to track me down. So
perfect.
You can head right there.
Awesome. So strideproductivity.com. Well, Valerie, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and we'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.